In our headlines on this Friday, December 19th, here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung shares his concerns about the lack of communication on the Korean peninsula, highlighting the importance of interactions across the border for mutual prosperity. Over in Japan, policymakers at the central bank there raised their benchmark interest rate to 0.75%, its highest level in 30 years, in line with efforts to ease inflation despite the weak economy. Meanwhile, following approval from the U.S. Congress, President Donald Trump signs into law a defense budget for next year that, among other stipulations, restricts the reduction of American soldiers in South Korea. We start with the policy briefings by the Ministries of Foreign Affairs and Unification that were shared earlier on this Friday. And with regard to the latter, President Lee Jae-myung lamented the presence of heightened tensions and the absence of communication on the Korean peninsula. Our correspondent Yoon Seok-hwa reports.
남북 관계를 요새 제가 들여다보면 그런 느낌이 들어요. 진짜 원수가 된 것 같습니다.
This was how President Lee Jae-myung said he viewed the current mood on the peninsula, as he was briefed on Friday by the chiefs in charge of foreign affairs and North Korea policy.
북한이 전 분계선에 걸쳐서 삼중 철책을 치고 다리를 끊고 도로를 끊고 옹벽을 쌓고 이런 경우가 처음이라는 겁니다. 수십 년 만에. 북한은 혹시 남쪽이 북침하지 않을까? 이 걱정을 해가지고.
He said that political motivation is to blame, mentioning the hardline approach by the previous administration. With Pyongyang rejecting outright calls for dialogue, Lee called for efforts by the Unification Ministry.
남북 간에 소통하고 또 대화하고 협력하고 공존 공영의 길을 가야 되는데 지금은 바늘구멍 하나도 여지가 없습니다. 인내심을 가지고 선제적으로 주도적으로 남북 간의 적대가 완화될 수 있도록.
The Unification Minister stressed the need to relieve sanctions against the North.
In reality, sanctions against North Korea have become ineffective. The backyard for trade with China, which accounts for 90% of its trade, is widely open, and the North sees sanctions as the most hostile act.
On diplomacy surrounding the peninsula,
next year, we will make sure to hold another South Korea-U.S. summit in a timely manner and reaffirm follow-up measures to what's been agreed at the top level, in particular in nuclear-powered submarines, nuclear energy, and shipbuilding.
the foreign minister added that arrangements will be made for President Lee's state visit to China early next year and vowed to continue top-level diplomacy with Japan. President Lee also instructed his officials to speed up introducing mail-in and electronic voting systems for overseas Koreans.
비행기 타고 무슨 6시간 가서 투표를 했니, 무슨 차 타고 1박 2일로 가서 투표를 했니, 그러고 있잖아요. 그러지 않게 해야죠. 어쨌든 그건 국가의 책임이라고 생각이 됩니다.
When it comes to public access to information, he was critical of the government restricting South Koreans' access to North Korea's state media Dodong Shinmun, saying that granting the access wouldn't make people turn into communists or pro-North Koreans. Yoon Seok-hwa, Arirang News.
Following approval from the U.S. Congress, President Donald Trump has signed into law a defense budget for next year that, among other stipulations, restricts the reduction of American service members from South Korea. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung reports.
After President Trump signed the National Defense Authorization Act for next year on Thursday local time, it officially took effect immediately. The NDAA, an annual bill that authorizes military spending, was signed after it was passed by both chambers of Congress. The bill approves a defense budget of $901 billion, about $8 billion more than requested by the administration. A key provision bars the use of defense funds to reduce U.S. troops in South Korea below the current level of 28,500 and reaffirms the U.S. nuclear umbrella commitment to Seoul. The funding restriction, which had been absent during the Biden administration, returns under Trump's second term for the first time in 5 years. The bill also restricts funding for the transfer of wartime operational control from the U.S. South Korea Combined Forces Command to a South Korea-led command to prevent the transfer process from deviating from the agreed framework. The restriction can be lifted after 60 days if the Defense Secretary certifies the transfer aligns with U.S. national security interests and has been coordinated with allies and member states of the United Nations Command. Provisions granting priority to South Korean and Japanese companies for investments in new shipyard construction in the U.S. were ultimately excluded from the final NDAA. Instead, the act calls for the development of a comprehensive strategy to improve the shipbuilding sector, including optimizing existing public shipyard infrastructure. When it comes to Europe, the NDAA prohibits reducing U.S. troop levels permanently stationed or deployed in Europe below 76,000 for more than 45 days. Adding to that, it authorized an additional $800 million in military assistance to Ukraine, as well as hundreds of millions of dollars in additional support for allies or strategic partners such as Israel, Taiwan, and Iraq. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, National Security Advisor Wee Sung-lak says Seoul and Washington have agreed to promptly implement follow-up measures to the agreements outlined in their joint fact sheet. The comment was made to members of the media early Thursday local time, following a busy agenda in Washington, D.C. Now, while refraining from sharing specific details, he claimed progress had been made in the latest bilateral talks. Upon his arrival in the U.S. this past Tuesday, we met with his U.S. counterpart Marco Rubio, who also serves as Secretary of State, before speaking with U.S. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright on Wednesday. Meanwhile, also later on Thursday, we sat down with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in New York. Over in Japan, the central bank there has raised its benchmark interest rate to its highest since the year 1995 as part of efforts to rein in inflation. Our Park Jun covers this rise and its broader implications.
As widely expected, the Bank of Japan on Friday decided to raise its short-term key interest rate from 0.5% to 0.75%. This 0.25 percentage point increase is the first since the bank raised its key rate in January this year, and is also the first since Sanai Takaichi became Japan's prime minister in October. The decision puts Japan's current key rate at its highest level in 30 years and 3 months. The Bank of Japan raised rates citing the likelihood of wages and prices continuing to rise moderately. A Japanese interest rate decision has a big impact on global asset markets, as a rise can cause what is called a yen carry trade unwind, meaning that investors stop borrowing cheap Japanese yen to buy high-yield foreign assets.
Japan has long maintained ultra-low, even negative, interest rates. This allowed investors to borrow cheaply in Japan and invest overseas, earning profits even from simple deposits. The so-called yen carry trade was widely used by global funds, including in South Korea. But as rates rise, borrowing capacity shrinks, and existing trades lose profitability. That could trigger asset sell-offs, leading to sharp declines in asset prices and higher interest rates.
Another economics professor also pointed to the potential impact on South Korea's asset markets.
Low-interest yen loans that flowed overseas could start to unwind. Funds would likely move out of markets like South Korea and back into Japan. That could pressure Korean stocks and trigger sell-offs in Korean bonds, so the impact on Korea's financial markets could be significant.
Meanwhile, the Bank of Japan has stated that it could raise interest rates further if prices rise steadily above 2% and wages also increase. It believes current monetary conditions remain supportive and plans to gradually adjust policy in response to price and economic developments to ensure the stable achievement of its inflation target. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
And back here in South Korea, producer prices rose for the third month in a row in November in light of the weak South Korean currency and strong demand for semiconductors. Our Yoon Seok-hwa covers this latest increase and its implications.
As the Korean won remains weak and demand for semiconductors is strong, producer prices in November rose for the third consecutive month. According to preliminary data released by the Bank of Korea on Friday, the producer price index recorded 121.31 for November. This marks a 0.3% gain month on month, following a 0.4% increase in September and 0.3% in October. Producer prices are a statistical measure of price changes in goods and services supplied by local producers to the domestic market, which is why it serves as a key indicator of future consumer inflation. Data showed prices of agricultural, forestry, and fishery products, in fact, fell 2.1% in November from the previous month, while gas, water, and electricity prices also dropped 0.4%. However, prices of industrial goods rose 0.8% month on month. Those of computers, electronic, and optical equipment increased 2.3%. And coal and petroleum products rose 5%. The 5% jump was the largest since September 2023, when prices jumped 6.9%. The head of the BOK's price statistics team, Lee Moon-hee, explained that although global crude oil prices fell, the appreciation of the won against the dollar and rising refining costs combined to drive petroleum products prices higher. He further explained the impact of the exchange rate on producer prices, as increases in the prices of imported raw materials or intermediate items can raise domestic production costs, thereby indirectly causing upward pressure on producer prices. The data showed the domestic supply price index, which accounts for both producer and import prices, added 0.7% month on month in November. 이은진, Arirang News.
Trade between North Korea and China rebounded in November to its highest level in 6 years. North Korea monitoring website NK News, citing the Chinese Customs Service, reported the bilateral trade hit $281 million last month. This amount is the highest since October 2019, when trade totaled $287 million. China exported various machinery to the regime in recent months, including medical devices and agricultural machinery. Now, notably, a vehicle banned from being traded under UN Security Council resolutions was also found to have been transferred to North Korea. U.S. President Donald Trump says efforts to end the war in Ukraine are advancing towards a potential breakthrough. His optimism comes ahead of planned talks between U.S. and Russian officials in Miami this coming weekend. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
U.S. President Donald Trump says talks aimed at ending the war in Ukraine are moving closer to a possible breakthrough, as American, Russian, and Ukrainian officials prepare for a new round of diplomatic contacts this weekend. Speaking on Thursday, President Trump said negotiations are getting close to something ahead of a planned meeting in the United States involving Russian officials.
Well, they're getting close to something, but I hope Ukraine moves quickly. I hope Ukraine moves quickly because Russia's there. And, every time they take too much time, then Russia changes their mind.
According to a U.S. official, a Kremlin envoy will travel to Florida to discuss Washington's proposal, part of an intensifying diplomatic push by the Trump administration to broker a deal. The official said Kirill Dmitriev, who heads Russia's Sovereign Wealth Fund, is scheduled to meet Saturday in Miami with President Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff, as well as Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. Witkoff and Kushner are expected to meet Dmitriev following earlier discussions this week in Berlin with Ukrainian and European officials. Those talks focused on U.S. security guarantees for Kyiv, possible territorial concessions, and other elements of the American-authored framework aimed at ending the conflict. Asked about the Miami meeting, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said on Thursday that Moscow is preparing for contacts with the U.S. to hear the results of the Berlin discussions, but declined to provide further details. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky struck a more skeptical tone. In an address on Wednesday, he said Russia is preparing the coming year as a year of war, despite ongoing U.S. brokered peace efforts. Zelensky pointed to comments made by Russian President Vladimir Putin earlier in the week, saying they sent clear signals of Moscow's aggressive intent. Zelensky also highlighted an upcoming summit in Brussels, where European leaders are expected to discuss the possible use of roughly $250 billion in frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine. He said the outcome of those talks must ensure that Russia understands continuing the war next year makes no sense, adding that Europe's decision will be critical to sustaining Ukraine's defense and shaping the path forward. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In other news, Yoon Seok-hwa, a central member of South Korea's modern theatre, passed away on this Friday at the age of 69. According to the Korean Actors Association, Yoon had been battling a brain tumor after a related surgery in the year 2022. Her final presence on stage was in August of last year, when she made a brief guest appearance in the production Toccata. Yoon earned critical acclaim for her powerful performances in numerous theatrical productions and later expanded her career to produce and direct works on stage. 'Tis the season to be jolly, and for those of you here in Seoul, there are a number of festive events currently underway aimed at spreading the Christmas cheer and more. Our Park Onu was out and about.
Long lines, but no complaints. Only smiles and anticipation. People patiently wait near Gwanghwamun Square in central Seoul, as if something magical is about to happen. As visitors pass through the entrance, the scene feels like stepping into a Christmas fairy tale. As soon as the sun goes down, the Christmas market lights turn on. Christmas is nearly here and people are enjoying the Christmas vibe. The most popular spot is this 50-meter landmark Christmas tree where people take nice pictures and make long-lasting memories with their loved ones. Inside the market, it's bustling with visitors, while hundreds of vendors sell everything from Christmas goods to local handmade items, including Rudolph-shaped candles, colorful wrapping cloths, and traditional lucky pouches. Photo spots are everywhere, like this merry-go-round, which is especially popular with families with children.
It really feels like Christmas and is such a nice experience. There's so much for the kids to enjoy: the merry-go-round, photo spots, and even small things to buy.
An interesting twist for them is that these shops change every week through the end of the month, giving visitors a magical chance to discover something new each time they come.
Winter is usually the off-season here, especially at night. But tourists still need things to see and enjoy after dark. That's why we created this, and we plan to expand it even further.
There are visitors from across the globe, such as European tourists, familiar with traditional Christmas markets back home.
We didn't realize that Christmas was quite so popular here. I certainly wasn't expecting to see a Christmas market. It's absolutely beautiful. The light show was fantastic. Everyone seems really happy.
As night falls, the lights become even more dazzling. And the celebration doesn't stop here. Just a short walk away, Cheonggyecheon Stream is glowing with its light festival, running through early January. The displays are made of Korean traditional paper hanji, featuring illuminated sculptures that blend tradition with modern design. One standout is the Pokemon character Magikarp, as it's gone viral on social media, drawing even more visitors. Together, the Gwanghwamun Market and Cheonggyecheon Light Festival have already attracted around 1.5 million visitors in just over a week. Due to high popularity, operating hours have recently been extended by around an hour, and the Seoul Tourism Organization now aims to welcome 6 million visitors this season. And thanks to all of that, downtown Seoul's winter nights are feeling much warmer, brighter, and just a little more magical than ever before. Park Onu, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. In the United States, the Trump administration has moved to sharply restrict transgender, gender-affirming medical care for minors. The Department of Health and Human Services has unveiled proposals that would cut off Medicaid and Medicare funding to hospitals providing puberty blockers, hormone therapy, or related procedures for children. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said on Thursday that the treatments are, quote, malpractice, and that the changes would protect children's futures. The proposals would affect access to transgender care in nearly 24 states, where such care remains legal and covered by Medicaid. Major U.S. medical organizations oppose the move, saying it contradicts established standards of care and could put lives at risk. The rules still must go through a lengthy public review process, but hospitals have already begun halting care in anticipation of federal action. In Southeast Asia, Thailand on Thursday carried out airstrikes near Cambodia's Poipet border crossing amid renewed fighting between the two countries. Thailand said it bombed a logistics center used to store BM-21 rocket systems. Officials from the two countries say the clashes this month have killed at least 21 people in Thailand and 17 in Cambodia. More than 800,000 people have been displaced. Poipet is the largest land crossing between the two countries and a major casino hub. The fighting follows the collapse of a ceasefire brokered earlier this year by Malaysia and the United States. In the United States, a business jet on Thursday crashed while landing at Statesville Regional Airport in North Carolina, killing all 7 people on board. Authorities said the Cessna C550 erupted into flames after hitting the ground. The victims included retired NASCAR driver Greg Biffle, his wife, their 2 children, and 3 others. Flight records show the aircraft was registered to a company run by Biffle. NASCAR called Greg Biffle a champion and a beloved figure in the sport, and will be remembered for his passion for racing. In Egypt, scientists have discovered fossils of a previously unknown ancient crocodile species in the country's western desert. Researchers say the animal, named Wadisucus kasabi, lived around 80 million years ago and measured up to 4 meters long. The fossils were found near the Karga and Baris oases and included partial skulls from multiple individuals. Scientists say the discovery fills a major gap in North Africa's fossil record and helps explain how crocodile species evolved before the extinction of dinosaurs. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
This Friday morning started off quite cold, with temperatures falling below freezing in many regions. As the day goes on, warmer southern winds moved in, leading temperatures to go up quickly. It will be just as mild tomorrow. However, colder air is expected to move in overnight, and it will turn colder on Sunday. Rain is forecast across the country tomorrow, starting from western areas early tomorrow morning and spreading to the east by late morning. Rainfall will not be heavy or long-lasting, but as temperatures are expected to drop quickly on Sunday, icy roads could be around. Seoul will start off at 9 degrees Celsius tomorrow morning, Chuncheon at 2 degrees. Daily highs will rise up to 11 degrees in Seoul, 17 degrees in Daegu. The morning temperature in Seoul will plunge to -5 degrees on Monday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, so do stay with us, and thank you for now.